All right, so today we're tackling a mystery that's captivated people for decades. The Dyatlov Pass Incident. You've given us hiker diaries, photographs, autopsy reports, theories, galore, everything from avalanches to, military cover-ups. It's a lot to unpack.
It is, and the fact that it all went down back in 1959 in the Ural Mountains, a place known for its brutal winters, well, it adds a layer of isolation and danger that's hard to shake off.
Yeah, not exactly a forgiving environment to be caught unprepared in.
Ah.
But we're not talking about a couple of inexperienced hikers getting lost. These were seasoned hikers from the Ural Polytechnical Institute.
Exactly. These were people who knew the mountains, knew the risks of winter expeditions, which makes their story even more unsettling. They were meticulous about documenting their journey, too.
And thank goodness for that, right? Because those diaries and photographs are like breadcrumbs in this whole thing.
Absolutely. But even with those breadcrumbs, the trail goes cold in some very disturbing ways.
Before we get there, let's set the stage. We've got our team of hikers led by Igor Dyatlov, a 23-year-old engineering student. And it's 1959, right in the thick of the Cold War. Does that context, that sense of paranoia, play into how we view this incident, you think?
It's definitely a factor, especially with some of the theories we'll be getting into. But for now, we've got this group eager to test their limits in the Ural Mountains.
And the location itself is pretty ominous. Kholat Cycle, Dead Mountain. Talk about foreshadowing.
You almost couldn't make this stuff up.
Right.
But amidst all the anticipation and meticulous planning, there's one member of the group who never makes it to Dead Mountain, Yuri Yudin.
Yuri, our what-if guy. Imagine having you pull out of the expedition because of a bout of rheumatism.
He had to turn back not knowing he was walking away from one of the biggest mysteries in history. Talk about a sliding doors moment.
It's impossible not to wonder, right? Would he have suffered the same fate as the others, or might his presence have somehow changed things? We're left to grapple with that chilling question as we follow the remaining 9 hikers deeper into the Ural Mountains. So, 9 hikers head into these unforgiving mountains. When were they supposed to check back in?
They were due back February 12th, 1959. That date was marked down at their institute, to everyone expecting their return, but February 12th comes and goes. At first, no one's really hitting the panic button.
Right, things happen out in the wilderness, especially in a place like that in winter. Can't exactly call for a tow truck.
Exactly.
But as the days stretch on, I imagine that concern starts to feel pretty heavy.
Absolutely. And by February 20th, a full week past their due date, things get official. A search party is formed, local police, military personnel, even some of their fellow students. This wasn't just a casual lost-in-the-woods situation anymore. This was serious.
And then they find the tent. Right?
Yeah.
And that's when the whole incident takes on this eerie, almost cinematic quality. What was it about that discovery that sent chills down everyone's spine?
Picture this February 26th. The search party stumbles upon the hiker's tent on the slopes of Kholat Shackle. It's partially buried in snow, looking for all the world like it's been through some kind of struggle. But here's the kicker, it was slashed open from the inside.
Okay, that's not just weird, that's downright unsettling. What would make experienced hikers cut their way out of their tent in the middle of the Ural winter? It had to be something terrifying, right?
You would think so, and if that wasn't strange enough, the contents of the tent just deepened the mystery. Boots, coats, food supplies. They left behind essential gear, things you wouldn't abandon unless you were literally running for your life.
And not just running for their lives, but running into conditions that could kill them even faster.
Right.
They didn't exactly have time to pack for an emergency evacuation.
Exactly. It's like they were desperate to get away from something or towards something.
So the search party's thinking, okay, maybe a sudden storm panicked them, they had to make a run for it. But then they follow the footprints and the trail gets even weirder.
And weird is putting it mildly. These footprints lead away from the tent, down towards the tree line, and they're all over the place. Some barefoot, some in socks, one set with mismatched shoes. It's as if they weren't thinking clearly or acting rationally in those final moments.
That kind of chaotic escape.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder if they were more terrified of something than of the elements themselves.
Yeah.
Did the investigators have any theories about what might have caused such a panicked flight?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And to make matters worse, the discovery of the bodies just complicates things even further. Because they weren't all together, they were found in 2 distinct groups with wildly different stories to tell.
Okay, so let's talk about those groups. We've got a real mystery on our hands, and I have a feeling those details are key.
They are. About a mile from the tent under this large cedar tree, they find the first 2 bodies, Yuri Krivonyshenko and Yuri Doroshenko. And get this, they were dressed only in their underwear.
Hold on, underwear. In the dead of winter, in the Urals. That's not just strange, that's almost ritualistic. It's like whatever drove them from that tent robbed them of their ability to think clearly.
It's chilling, isn't it? And it gets worse. Both had severe burns on their hands and feet, as if they were desperately trying to warm themselves by the small fire found nearby.
So they were trying to survive clinging to life. But then there's the cedar tree itself, right?
Yeah.
That detail always gets to me.
Right. The branches of that cedar tree were broken, but not just a few feet up. We're talking up to 15 feet high. This wasn't someone casually gathering kindling.
This was someone climbing for their life, or at least for a better vantage point. Desperate, frantic. It paints such a vivid picture of their last moments. But the question remains, why? What were they so desperate to see or to escape?
And what's even more perplexing is that the fire was small, as if built in haste. If they were out there that long, wouldn't they have built a bigger fire? It just doesn't add up.
It's like every new detail just adds another layer to the mystery.
And we're just getting started. Not far from that cedar tree, they find Igor Dyatlov himself, the leader of the expedition. His hands were frozen, gripping a small branch, as if he was fighting against something or someone. And his watch, it had stopped at 5:31 a.m.
Frozen in time. It's a haunting detail that really drives home the suddenness, the abruptness of this whole tragedy. But what about the others? Where did they find them?
Rustam Slobodin and Zenaida Kolmogorova were discovered nearby, both facing the direction of the tent, almost as if they were trying to crawl back. They succumbed to the cold, much like the first two.
So we've got 5 hikers dead from hypothermia, which is tragic enough.
God.
But the circumstances surrounding the remaining 4, that's where this case takes a truly unsettling turn. So we left off with those last 4 hikers, the ones found months later in a ravine further down the mountain. And that's where this whole thing goes from a tragic but maybe explainable accident to something truly unexplained. I mean, those first 5 deaths, as awful as they were, you can at least sort of picture it, right?
Yeah.
A desperate fight for survival against the elements. But these last 4, their injuries are different.
Yeah, because it wasn't just the cold that got to them.
Right.
We're talking severe internal injuries like the kind you might see in a car crash. But there were no external signs of impact. Lyudmila Dubanina, for instance, had broken ribs, a fractured skull, and her tongue, while part of it was missing.
Okay, that's undeniably disturbing. It's like something out of a horror movie, not a hiking expedition. And those kinds of injuries weren't isolated to just her, were they? What about the other 3?
The other 3 were found in even worse shape. Alexander Kolovatov had massive internal injuries, but no corresponding external wounds. Nikolai Thibault Brignol had a crushed skull, and Semyon Zolotaryov, along with Dubanina, had multiple broken ribs.
So an incredible amount of force inflicted on these hikers. But the lack of external injuries, it's as if whatever happened to them struck them from the inside out. It almost defies logic.
It does make you wonder what could possibly cause that kind of trauma. And it's these injuries that have fueled so much speculation over the years.
Speaking of speculation, let's dive into those theories. We've got everything from the plausible to the downright bizarre. Where do we even start?
Well, the avalanche theory is often the first one people jump to. Makes sense on the surface, right? A sudden avalanche could explain the frantic escape from the tent, the injury sustained by the last 4. But here's the thing. The tent itself was only partially damaged. And there was no evidence of a large-scale avalanche in the area.
So if an avalanche did occur, it would have had to have been incredibly localized and powerful to inflict those kinds of injuries without leaving behind more obvious evidence. What about other natural explanations I've heard about the infrasound theory? What's the science behind that?
So infrasound is basically a very low-frequency sound wave that can be created by things like wind patterns over mountains. Often too low for humans to hear, but it can cause feelings of unease, disorientation, even panic. Some researchers believe prolonged exposure can lead to physical discomfort and even hallucinations.
So theoretically, they could have been bombarded by this invisible force, freaked out, and bolted from the tent thinking something was after them.
It's an intriguing possibility. Could explain some of the seemingly irrational behavior, but does it fully explain those catastrophic internal injuries? The jury's still out on that one.
And then there are the theories that veer into, let's say, more unconventional territory. Military testing, for example. We're talking 1959, the height of the Cold War, secret weapons being developed. Could those hikers have stumbled onto something they shouldn't have seen?
It's a theory that has persisted over the years, fueled by eyewitness reports of strange lights in the sky around that time. Some people believe the hikers might have wandered into a military testing zone, witnessed something they weren't supposed to, and become collateral casualties.
And then there's the radiation angle.
Yeah.
Some of the hikers' clothing reportedly had traces of radiation on it, which adds another layer of intrigue to the whole thing. Is there any evidence to support this idea of a cover-up, or is it just speculation running wild?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The truth is, there's just not enough concrete evidence to definitively prove or disprove any of these theories. And that's what makes the Dyatlov Pass incident so fascinating and so frustrating. We have all these pieces of the puzzle diaries, photographs, forensic analysis, but they don't quite fit together to form a clear picture.
It's almost as if we're not meant to fully understand it. Like some mysteries are just too profound, too strange to ever fully comprehend.
Exactly. And that's what makes this incident so thought-provoking. It forces us to confront the limitations of our own knowledge and the fact that even with all the information in the world, some things may always remain a mystery.
So we're left to grapple with the chilling details, the unanswered questions, and the haunting possibility that we may never truly know what happened to those hikers on Dead Mountain. It's a reminder that even in our modern world, there are still corners of the earth where mystery and the unknown hold sway.
And, the Dyatlov Pass incident isn't just about finding a right answer. It's about acknowledging the unknown, embracing the mystery, and accepting that sometimes the most enduring questions are the ones that remain unanswered.
Well, thank you for taking this deep dive with us into one of history's most enduring mysteries. What do you think happened on Dead Mountain? Let us know your theories. Until next time, keep exploring.